Alrighty, guys, so I've been scrolling on TikTok for a little bit and I've seen a lot of financial advice. It seems like everybody's given their 2 cents on the topic. But the question is, how much of it is actually good advice? How much of it is bad advice? And how much of it will actually ruin your life? And today we set out like Frodo Baggins to find out the real truth behind that question. So let's dive in.
Just in case your parents didn't teach you about money, here's everything I did the day I turned 18 years old to set me up to win in life. And because I followed these rules, I now have perfect credit and over $1 million net worth at 26 years old. Starting off with number one, you're going to open 4 free bank accounts. The first one is going to be a checking account. The next is a high yield savings account. Then we have a brokerage account. And then within the brokerage account, you are going to open a Roth IRA. A checking account is where your money goes in and out of. A high yield savings account is where you're going to save money while gaining interest. And then your brokerage account and your Roth IRA is where you're going to invest your money and watch your money grow. The next thing I would do.
Yeah, those are like the most standard 4 accounts that everybody should have realistically. Checking account, you basically need that. Savings account, obviously good for savings, and then a brokerage and a Roth IRA. Those would be, the Roth IRA specifically would be the first investment account that I would open, and then a brokerage account for anything over that. Also 401k if you have that, but that can be dependent on your line of work and whatnot. So that's a pretty good start for those 4 accounts.
Start tracking your money, because the only way to be successful with your money is to know exactly how much you make, spend, and invest. And if you need help doing that, my budget tracker is linked in my bio. The next thing I want you to do is start building your emergency fund. And this is money that you have set aside and don't touch unless you have an emergency. And I want you to start with $1,000, but eventually you should save up to the point where you can cover 3 to 6 months of your expenses. This next thing is so important to start doing at an early age, and that is building your credit as well as good credit habits. So I want you to go ahead and apply for your first credit card and start using it. But I want you to treat that credit card like a debit card. You never spend money you don't have, you never carry a balance, and you never pay any interest. Next up, I want you to focus on learning at least one high value skill, whether it's content creation, editing, coding, using AI, something that can make you more money. And if you don't know where to start, I always recommend starting with sales. And the last thing I want you to do is to go get a gym membership and do your best to look your best, because as someone that grew up overweight and has lost over 50 pounds, I can promise you that looks fucking matter. People treat you differently, you will be more confident in yourself, and because of that, you will end up making more money.
Yeah, I think that's all good advice. I really honestly like the last piece of advice. Go to the gym, work on yourself, because, feeling good about yourself actually, impacts all these other areas in your life. And so that's something that doesn't get brought up like hardly ever. I never hear that in the personal finance realm, but I think that's a big thing, honestly, being confident in yourself. That's great.
These are 4 money rules that everyone should learn by 25. The first rule is to automate your saving and investing. If you're still relying on willpower to save and invest, you're literally playing on hard mode. You can set up a simple automation so that whenever you get a paycheck, a percentage of it automatically goes to your savings and your investments. That way, it just happens in the background and you can spend whatever's left over, instead of the reverse.
Yeah, automating your savings and investings is a huge part about being financially responsible. It takes basically all of the stress, anxiety, the pressure, being able to remember things. It takes all of that out of the equation. You set it once, you forget it, and your life is basically on autopilot for the things that aren't that interesting, right? And then you can focus on whatever you want to do, whether that be, your hobbies, your interests. Maybe you want to make more money. You can focus on those things instead of, oh my goodness, I need to save $500 in my Roth IRA this month. That's boring, right? Automate it, save it, out of sight, out of mind. That's a good piece of financial advice.
The second money rule is to avoid high interest debt like the plague. Credit cards charging 20% plus interest will literally destroy your financial future if you can't pay them off. So no, I'm not talking about student loans or mortgages. I'm talking about high interest consumer debt on your credit cards. You need to kill that as soon as possible.
Avoiding high interest rate debt, that's also a great piece of advice. Honestly, not having credit card debt is a no-brainer. You should probably get out of that if you're in it and not go into it if you're not currently in it. That's good advice.
And the next money rule is you need to start investing as long as you have an emergency fund and you've killed all of your high interest debt. Start with investing however much you can, but ideally you want to be at 10 to 20% of your annual income.
Her third piece of advice is also great. Investing as soon as possible. She even said that you should get an emergency fund in there beforehand. I think that's great advice. And then investing somewhere between 10 and 20% is a great starting point. Honestly, if you can invest more than that, might be even better, but yeah, that's great advice too. Investing, get it into the market as soon as possible. That's pretty good.
And the last money rule is to always spend less than you earn. Avoid lifestyle overinflation. You've probably heard about lifestyle inflation, which I actually think can be a good thing. When you make more money, you should be able to spend more money on things that you care about, but there can be a point where you overinflate your lifestyle and you actually can't afford it.
Spend less than you make. Honestly, I think that's a no-brainer at this point. If you guys are watching this and you don't already know that personal finance rule, then you should probably take a look in the mirror and make sure that we get that one down before we look at any other piece of personal advice. on the internet. That's, probably rule number one.
I used to work in personal finance, and one of my main questions I would get is, I want to stack my savings account, or I want to pay down my credit really fast. Like, what's a good way to do this? And my number one piece of advice to friends, family, clients, myself, if you cannot afford it twice, you can't afford it. If you cannot afford to buy something twice, you cannot afford it. So I would always give the piece of advice, say for example, $6 coffee every morning. Okay, $6 coffees are not going to make or break your bank. People that say that, like, they're just living in a different world. If coffees are the reason people can't pay their mortgage, we've got bigger problems. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, so I would always say, for example, it's the principle behind it. If you can afford your $6 drink and a $6 towards your savings account or your credit, depending on what you're choosing to do, you can get the coffee. Where this comes into play is, for example, say you're saving for a new pair of shoes. You really want these new pair of heels. They're $100. So you save the $100 for the heels, and then you save an additional $100 for either your savings account or your credit card bill. By the time comes to go purchase those shoes, now you've worked enough to get 2 pairs of shoes, which is double the work, right? So it's either going to eliminate, now you don't want the shoes because you're like, is it really worth my double the work for these pairs of shoes, or did I just want them for instant gratification? Or if you do end up purchasing the shoes, they mean a lot more to you because you worked a lot harder for them.
All right, I actually think that was a fantastic piece of advice, and I think that'd help a lot of people out when determining whether or not they should buy something, right? Because in the world of personal finance, you usually have 2 schools of thought. The one where it's like you should save and invest basically all of your money, never buy anything. She gave an example of the coffee. You should never buy coffee. You should save and invest that money, right? And then you have the other side of the story where it's like you should be buying the things that you like, right? You should be spending money on experiences and your hobbies, things that bring you value. But it can be a little gray area when determining, well, I kind of want these pair of shoes, but should I really be spending $100? And I think using the rule of thumb where you have to be able to buy it twice and treat that like you purchasing it rather than it's $100, I have $100, I want it, I'm gonna get it. Say, I want the pair of shoes, but it's $200. Do I still want it? I think that is a great little mental trick that you can use when determining whether or not you should buy these slightly more expensive items.
In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to explain how to stop being broke, coming from someone who's broke 3 years ago and now just 20 years old, has over 6 figures saved.
You were broke at 17, like basically everybody?
I talk about financial literacy in a way where 20-year-olds can understand. Off number one, the most important part is understanding your income and understanding your outcome. If you're watching this, I assume you have some sort of income, and if you don't, that's your first step to stop being broke. But you have to understand your income. You have to know exactly what's going in and track it religiously. You have to know what's coming in weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is. More important part is the flip side, the outcome. That's your expenses that cost you to live. Understanding both your income and outcome is going to do you a favor because you're going to realize how much extra money that you're spending on stuff you don't need. You track all of your income, you track all of your expenses, and you realize you just don't have enough money. That's when you need to come up with a side hustle. It doesn't matter if it's a second job, raking leaves, or flipping things on Facebook. If you can bring in some extra income, that's going to help out your case a lot. Once you get some extra money in your account, you don't want to save that money. You want to start investing that money, because if there's one thing you want to know about your money, is that your money should be working for you and no one else. And what investing does for you, it gives you an opportunity to make passive income, money in your sleep, money while you're working, money while you're doing anything you want to do.
That seems like a pretty good train of thought to me. Step number 1 is get an income. Step number 2 was know exactly how much you bring in and how much goes out every single month. And then if the expenses are higher or too close to the income, then maybe you need to look into getting a side hustle or increasing your income some other way, and then save and invest. I mean, that's pretty sound financial advice.
I'm gonna keep it a whole beam with y'all right now. I don't know how a lot of y'all surviving. Like, the cost of everything right now, I really feel bad for the younger generation, because I could remember I could survive off $120 from one Friday all the way to the next Friday. Literally, I made that shit work. Don't ask me how I did that shit, but I did that shit. The cost of shit now, the people we got that are sitting in Washington, D.C., they gonna have y'all in a situation to where it ain't gonna be no catching up. It ain't gonna be, all right, you even if this shit gets back to normal, just say it even gets back to normal, when it gets back to normal, the cost of everything is gonna be so much more high to where even at that stage, you still won't be able to afford a house, a car, just the basic shit that you should be able to accept or be able to have.
All right, this is kind of a weird one because what he's saying in the video is true, obviously, to some extent. With inflation being pretty high the past couple of years, stuff's going to go up and it's not going to come back down, right? The rate at which it's increasing might slow down a little bit, but the prices aren't going to return to what they were 6 years ago, right? And that's going to affect your housing, your cars, and everything like that. But on the flip side, really, I mean, that's just kind of the state of things now. Whether or not we were dealt a good hand or a bad hand, that's kind of out of our control at this point. And so you kind of just got to play the cards that you're dealt and make the most of your situation, right? And I think it's kind of a bad thing to sit here and mope around, be like, oh, wow, we got a terrible situation. There's no point in trying when people are still going to be able to make it even if the situation doesn't look as good as it did, 10 years ago. Right? We can't buy houses for pennies on the dollars, but we can still buy houses, right? It's just going to be a little bit more effort, right? I'm always the type of person to say the grass is greener on the other side and there's light at the end of the tunnel. So maybe when we get through this part of our lives and we, work harder and we make it happen, maybe the grass will be greener on the other side and we'll get our moment where the economy is booming and we make tons of money. That's what we can hope for. But in the meantime, just stick it to the man, right? Get through this, make the best out of a bad situation. That's all we can really do.
When I was broke, one of the most difficult things for me to grasp was that you have to spend money to make more money. So here are 3 expensive purchases that are resulting in me making multiple 6 figures this year as a creator and dentist. Number 1 is food delivery. Trust me when I say that this used to sound bougie or just straight up lazy to me, but we underestimate how much time we spend preparing, cooking, and cleaning when it comes to food. My hourly rate as a creator and dentist is 10x what I would save from cooking every single meal. And having a couple pre-made meals a week opens up time so that I can reinvest it into the money-making machines in my life. Number 2 is a team member. I recently hired a talent manager to help me with brand deals, meetings, and administrative work, and she has made me so much richer. She captures all of those opportunities, creates new ones, but also allows me to be more present in the high-impact roles in my life. I make the most money when I am making content or when I am being a dentist, not responding to emails. Number 3 is a recent development, but it's a cleaner. I am balancing dentistry, content, working out, and just being a human all week long, which means I'm neglecting things in my life. But when it comes to the weekend, I do not have hours to spend deep cleaning my entire house. I need to be using that uninterrupted time to be creating videos or going to events or just living life.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good advice, but there's one stipulation I feel like he left out is, you have to make a decent amount of money to be able to afford these types of things, right? I mean, the meal prep service, you can probably do. It's not going to be that expensive, although I did the math a little while back because I was looking into this. And it's quite expensive per meal to order meal prepped delivery services. It's more than I thought it was going to be. So if that's something that you really want to do, you hate cooking, right? Or you make a lot of money per hour and it saves you that, that hour where you could be making a lot more, then go for it. But it's quite expensive. And then hiring somebody to be your personal secretary, like that's like a full-time salary that you have to pay, or at least a part-time salary. Like, I don't know, I can't afford that. I'm assuming most people probably can't afford that. And then a cleaner, I don't know how much they cost. I've never looked into it, but basically his point is, get rid of the mundane task so you can focus on making money. But I feel like you have to be making quite a bit of money to be able to afford to skip these mundane tasks, right? So it's maybe a type of thing where you have to do it and grind through it until you're making a certain amount, and then you can get rid of them and, focus on making even more money. But I don't think that really applies to most people.
Baby step 1, save
This is my goat right here.
$1,000 for your starter emergency fund. $1,000. When I first started doing this, I did not have that as baby step 1. I had shut up and get out of debt. But then people would have an alternator blow on their car that was $350, and they didn't have any money because I told them to put everything on their debt, and they would sit there going, I'm broke and I got to get to work. Screw you, Dave, this doesn't work. And they would quit. And so I went, okay, we got to have a little bit of pad, but we can't build up a big pile of money while we got this huge pile of debt over here. That doesn't make sense either. So we're going to get just a little starter emergency fund. The humorous thing is that 30 years later, now people are saying, Dave, you need to adjust this because of inflation. It was never intended to be enough. $1,000 is not enough, and by the way, $2,000 is not enough. So it doesn't matter, because you're not going to live here for very long. This is $1,000 just to catch the little stuff so you don't lose your emotional momentum, because we're running a behavior modification program here, so emotional momentum matters.
All right, I don't know about you guys, but I personally love Dave Ramsey. He was what got me into personal finance in the first place. And I know for a fact that he gets a lot of flack for his baby steps, specifically this one, his first baby step, save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. Everybody and their mother's like $1,000 is never enough. It's terrible. Inflation was through the roof. You made these steps in like 1960. It's not going to work today. And I'm glad that he actually in this video went over that and kind of clarified it. $1,000 is not enough. Increasing that to $2,000 is not enough. $3,000 probably still is not enough because it's just a starter emergency fund. And I think that's a pretty good concept. Saving $1,000 just in case something small happens, you can catch it. And then if something big happens, you're probably going to be SOL anyway, right? If you already have a ton of debt and you really have to get out of it and something big happens, I mean, it's just unlucky, right? It's just unlucky. So I think this is a good step. I love Dave Ramsey. Let me know down below in the comments whether or not you guys like Dave Ramsey, you think he's stupid. Whatever you guys think, let me know in the comments.
So we are anti-credit cards, for the record, because we just believe in spending your own money. Don't use the bank's money, even for your everyday monthly purchases. Just use your money. Just use your money so you don't have a bill, because you end up spending more on a credit card. I think, too, you're just involved in this like toxic game of like points and all this. Yeah, and you can rent a car. You can travel. You can do all the things with a debit card. Now, sometimes there's like a little hoop, right? Not all rental car companies will take your debit card, so you need to call ahead. So there's some planning, but we travel all the time.
You know what
and
the
we're
bigger
fine.
hoops are? Playing the credit card game.
All right, so we got Dave Ramsey's little puppets here. Anti-credit cards, obviously, as Dave Ramsey's brand is super anti anything to do with debt. I think that could be good advice, and it's probably good advice for a lot of people. But it's not a catch-all bucket, like nothing is in the personal finance realm, to be honest. If you're good with credit cards, they can be useful, they can be beneficial, they can help you out in some areas of life, but they are not necessary. Keyword, not necessary. So that's good advice, but not like the end-all be-all, if that makes sense.
What's your most controversial piece of money advice?
Save money. If you have money to save, you have money to invest. I like peace of mind. I like knowing that there is money there in case I need it. I value peace of mind more than not having money and going hustle to get some more. Even though I'm hustling, I'm always on the go everywhere, all the time. There is something to be said about having money in your savings. My billionaire mentor taught me that. He showed me that, and it made a lot of sense, and I'm buying it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice as well. I hear all of the time from a lot of the super rich, billionaire people on the internet. They say saving money is a joke. Like, you should never have any money saved. You should be, putting that towards your business, or you should be investing that to make even more money, because saving money, you make no money. There's no point in having money in a savings account. It's losing to inflation, yada, yada, yada. But as this guy said exactly, there is definitely good value in having money on hand just in case, whether that be your emergency fund or you're saving for a down payment on a house coming up or some other big expense, maybe a wedding, maybe, anything that you're saving money for. There's value in having that. It's peace of mind, it's clarity. And sometimes peace of mind is worth a heck of a lot more than making a little extra money.
Are the unhinged money decisions I've made as a multi-six-figure lawyer pursuing financial freedom. Number one, I max out all my 0% APR credit cards to buy assets. Number two,
whoa. I maxed out all of my 0% APR credit cards to buy assets. Okay, let's break that down for a second. All right, let's just start out with the idea in general. So obviously, maxing out your credit cards to buy assets is probably a terrible idea. And the reason is because you're probably paying 20, 30% interest on the credit cards, and your assets are probably only returning, 10 at best. And so there's a big gap there, and it's not in your favor. Now, she said 0% credit cards, which I'm assuming means that there's like an introductory 0% APR for like a year or something like that. And she maxed out all of those to buy assets. In theory, that seems like a great idea. It seems like a free loan that you can take to buy assets. Now, the first thing I want to ask is how do you even, I don't even understand how you buy assets with a credit card. Like, are you out buying stocks with a credit card? That doesn't make any sense. Are you taking out like a cash advance? Doesn't that come with interest? I'm confused how she even did it in the first place. Regardless, that 0% is going to end at some point, and so you're either going to have to cover that position with cash from either your savings or something, or you're going to have to, even worse, you're going to have to sell the assets to cover the position on your credit cards anyway to avoid having to pay that 20 to 30% interest. And selling assets a year after you buy them is not a good thing because obviously that it could go down. Like it's not automatically making money. So I'm very confused on this piece of advice. I'd love to see it in practice to see if this is just like the most bonkers thing I've ever heard of, or maybe she's cooking a little bit. I guess I don't know, but I would not recommend that for anybody watching.
Refuse to pay off my student loans. My student loans are at a very low rate of 3 to 4%. I could take the same amount of money, go and invest it, and earn like 10% on that money. Number 3,
That's much better advice.
Max out my 401k. I'd rather have my money in more liquid assets that not only grow over time, but also cash flow monthly.
Okay, not maxing out your 401k. That's another piece of advice I've heard a couple of times before. And I think that it's okay advice, but I think that's, disregarding the fact that a lot of people get a match on their 401k. And a 401k match is fantastic because it's literally free money and there's really no reason not to do it because a 401k is just another financial account. And so putting, a couple $100 in there a month and getting a couple $100 free every single month, I don't understand why you wouldn't take that. You don't need to max it out. I don't max mine out currently. I get the match and then I save and invest in my Roth IRA next. I'm currently saving for a house, so that's my third plan. But any extra money I have over and above that, I would put back into my 401k because it's another, tax advantaged account. So you take it what you will.
Might sound controversial and I might get a bit of stick for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I do not budget. I don't budget my monthly income, I don't budget my yearly income, and I don't budget anything at all. I simply spend what I want to spend. And look, I know that goes against what you see from a bunch of creators here on TikTok, social media, Instagram, etc. People break down exactly how much money comes in every single month and how much money goes out to the penny. I simply just don't do that. And look, I'm not saying that I'm irresponsible. I spend sensibly and I spend within my means. I just like the finer things in life and I work hard so I get what I want. And one of the main reasons why I don't budget is because I quickly early on learned that budgeting only gets you so far. Eventually, you're going to need to make more money. So instead of focusing on budgeting and scrimping away every single penny that I earn, I instead focus on areas in which I can earn more money. And I've been doing that for a number of years now. And honestly, I have not looked back. Not once have I thought to myself, let me start a budget or let me allocate every single penny that's coming into the household. Instead, I focus on areas in which I can earn more money, and therefore I haven't needed to budget.
Okay, so I think what's going on here is he's getting a couple of different personal finance concepts kind of convoluted together, and he's giving broad advice for something that's not very clear. Okay, so he just says that he doesn't budget and he thinks budgeting is bad. And the main reason behind it is because budgeting is like restrictive and you need to cut off your pennies from your spending. And he realized at a very young age, take it at that you just need to make more money. And I think those two things don't actually, go hand in hand, right? Budgeting doesn't necessarily mean that you need to cut your spending. Budgeting is just making a plan for the money that you do have. And it really doesn't matter how much money you make, you can still have a budget, and having a budget can still be a good thing. I think people just get so scared of the word budget because it's like some ghostly presence that's here to, take all of the fun in life away. But in reality, you're the one that creates your budget. So just create it in a way that, doesn't restrict your spending, right? Like if you want to have more money to spend on things that you enjoy, then just budget that money that you want to spend on the things you enjoy. The only problem with that is that you only have so much money, your income, every month, and you can only budget that amount, which works the same if you don't budget at all, right? If you spend more than you make, you're going to be in debts, and then that's a whole bad thing, which I'm assuming he doesn't agree with. So yeah, it's a very weird thing. I don't think necessarily budgets equals restrictions, and you just have to make more money. I don't think both of those things, kind of work together. I think making more money is obviously good. Budgeting is obviously good as long as you don't, kill yourself while doing it. Okay, so we scrolled on TikTok for a little bit. We came across some very good pieces of financial advice. We came across some controversial pieces of advice, and we came across some very, very controversial pieces of financial advice. But that's going to wrap it up for me today. I think I'm going to go brain dead here. If you guys made it this far in the video, down below in the comments, drop that little money emoji with the wings and let me know what is the most controversial piece of financial advice you've ever heard. Drop it down below in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But that's going to be a wrap for me today. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, maybe leave a like, maybe subscribe. Could be great. But everybody stay safe out there. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.